The quantum drive of the Zornak research vessel hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration that most crew members had long since stopped noticing. Senior researcher Krulax sat in his observation chair, 3 manipulative tendrils wrapped around data projectors, his central eye scanning the holographic displays with practiced disinterest. Another meaningless survey of the Orion Arm's peripheral asteroid field, a task typically assigned to junior researchers, but budget constraints and bureaucratic reshuffling had placed him here. Anomalous energy signature detected, chirped Lyra 6, her translation implant converting her native clicks and whistles into standard galactic communication. Her voice carried an edge of excitement that made Krulax's secondary sensory cluster twitch with irritation. "Specify," he demanded, not looking up from his preliminary geological reports. Lyra 6's tentacle-like appendages danced across the sensor interface. Young, ambitious, perpetually optimistic. Everything Krulax had learned to mistrust during his decades of research. Artificial composition. Precise geometric alignment. Radiation shielding consistent with long-term preservation techniques. Krulax finally rotated his primary sensory cluster toward the junior researcher. The asteroid field looked unremarkable. Countless tumbling rocks of varying compositions, the detritus of stellar formation. Yet something in Lyra 6's tone suggested this was different. "Magnify Sector 7 Delta," he instructed. The holographic display expanded, revealing a cluster of asteroids that seemed slightly too perfect in their arrangement. Between 2 massive, scarred rocks sat a metallic object that didn't quite match the surrounding stone's spectral signature. It was small, no larger than a standard research container, but its edges were too clean, its surface too uniform to be natural. "Prepare retrieval protocols," Krulax ordered, his tendrils already initiating ship-wide communication sequences. The retrieval process was anything but smooth. As the vessel's quantum magnetic tethers extended toward the object, the first hint of trouble emerged. A sudden electromagnetic pulse rippled through the ship's systems, causing momentary static in the holographic displays and a cascading series of warning signals. "Defensive mechanism," Lyra 6 muttered, her excitement now tinged with professional curiosity. Krulax's experience kept him calm. He'd encountered countless skin artifacts in his career, each with its own set of protective systems. But this was different. The pulse hadn't been a simple deterrent. It was a calculated response, intelligent and adaptive. The container, now clearly identifiable as a precisely engineered time capsule, began to emit a soft, pulsing light. Not a warning, not a threat, something else entirely. "Initiate full spectral analysis," Krulax commanded, and route all non-essential power to our quantum shields. Lyra 6 complied, her appendages moving with practiced efficiency. The container's surface began to shift, microscopic components realigning themselves in patterns that defied conventional understanding of material science. It was almost alive. A holographic projection erupted from the container's surface, not a standard communication method, but a complex, 3-dimensional representation that seemed to analyze the ship's interior as much as the ship was analyzing it. Intricate mathematical equations danced in the air, transforming and reshaping themselves faster than most biological processing systems could track. "It's testing us," Lyra 6 whispered. Krulax didn't respond immediately. The projection contained what appeared to be a child's drawing, crude lines depicting what looked like a planet, some stick figures, and something that might have been a spacecraft. Alongside this childish image were technical schematics so advanced they made the Zornak vessel's most sophisticated systems look primitive. A series of encrypted data packets began broadcasting from the container, not transmitted in any standard galactic communication protocol, but in a complex, multi-layered format that seemed to change its encryption with each millisecond. "Attempting decryption," Lyra 6 reported, her voice a mixture of professional calm and barely contained excitement. The ship's defensive systems hummed to maximum capacity. Whatever this was, whatever civilization had created this artifact, It was unlike anything they had encountered before. The time capsule had just transformed a routine survey mission into something far more significant. And neither Krillax nor Lyra 6 realized yet just how profoundly their understanding of the universe was about to change. First contact was nothing like they had been trained to expect. This was an invitation and a challenge. The ship's central processing chamber hummed with an unusual tension. Standard decryption protocols had failed spectacularly, each attempt met with increasingly complex algorithmic defenses that seemed to learn and adapt with terrifying speed. "It's not just protecting information," Lyra 6 muttered, her bioluminescent skin flickering with concentration. "It's evaluating us." Krillax watched as another decryption attempt dissolved into a cascade of mathematical paradoxes. The USB drive, a primitive data storage device by Galactic standards, had become their most challenging adversary. What should have been a simple data extraction had transformed into an intellectual battlefield. The chamber's holographic displays shifted, revealing fragments of data that disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. Glimpses of images, partial text, mathematical equations that seemed to fold in on themselves, each fragment a tantalizing hint of something larger. "Psychological screening," whispered Dr. Xantor, the vessel's synapsological specialist, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated environmental suit. Xantor had been observing silently, but now leaned forward with unmistakable interest. "This isn't just data protection. It's a complex cognitive challenge." Krillax's tendrils moved across the control interface, each movement precise and calculated. "Explain." Xantor's energy form pulsed, projecting a series of overlapping holographic analyses. "The encryption changes based on our approach. It's analyzing our problem-solving methods, our cognitive patterns, our emotional responses. Each failed attempt provides it with more information." The USB drive itself was an anomaly. Constructed from materials that defied straightforward spectral analysis, it seemed to shimmer slightly, not with any obvious technological energy, but with something more subtle. As if it were alive, or thinking. Lyra 6 initiated another decryption sequence. This time, the holographic displays erupted with a series of increasingly complex mathematical challenges. Some appeared to be standard computational problems, while others seemed to test lateral thinking, emotional intelligence, and collaborative reasoning. "Look," she said, her voice a mixture of excitement and frustration. "It's creating problems that require multiple approaches. No single method will work." A problem would appear, a complex geometric puzzle that seemed unsolvable through traditional mathematical approaches. But when Krillax and Lyra 6 approached it from different angles, combining their distinct cognitive processes, potential solutions would briefly materialize before dissolving. "It's testing our ability to collaborate," Dr. Xantor observed. "Not just our individual intelligence, but our capacity to work together." The challenges grew more bizarre. One moment, a complex mathematical equation would require advanced quantum computational techniques. The next, a seemingly simple logic puzzle would demand an understanding of emotional nuance that challenged the research team's technological mindset. An image flickered, a child's drawing, then a complex schematic, then a series of emotional facial expressions that seemed to change based on the researcher's collective emotional state. The USB drive was not just a data storage device. It was a test, a challenge. "This is deliberate," Krillax said, his usual cynicism replaced by a growing sense of professional respect. Whoever created this knew exactly what they were doing. A new challenge emerged, a holographic representation of what appeared to be a complex social scenario, multiple beings, conflicting objectives, limited resources. Success seemed to require not just computational power, but an understanding of cooperation, empathy, and strategic thinking. Lyra 6's tentacles moved rapidly, her mind racing through potential approaches. "We can't solve this individually," she realized. "It requires a collective approach." Dr. Xantor's energy form pulsed in agreement. "Precisely. Individual intelligence is insufficient. Collaborative intelligence is the key. As hours passed, the research team found themselves transformed. What had begun as a simple data retrieval mission had become a profound psychological journey. The USB drive was teaching them as much as they were attempting to understand it. Krulax realized something fundamental had changed. The time capsule was not just a repository of information. It was a message, a test, an invitation to understand a civilization that valued collaboration, adaptability, and collective intelligence. "We're being evaluated," he said quietly, "not just for our technological capabilities, but for our potential." The USB drive pulsed softly, as if in quiet acknowledgement. First contact was nothing like anyone had expected, and they had only just begun to understand the true complexity of what they had discovered. The ship's containment chamber hummed with an electric tension as the research team unsealed the next time capsule. After the psychological gauntlet of the USB drive, expectations were high, and nothing could have prepared them for what emerged. This capsule was different. Where the previous artifact had been a precision-engineered marvel of technological complexity, this one appeared deceptively simple. A reinforced container roughly the size of a standard research specimen case, its exterior marked with a series of cryptic symbols and what looked like multiple fail-safe mechanisms. "Defensive systems are still active," Lyra 6 warned, her tentacle-like appendages dancing across the containment field controls. Multiple layers of protection. Each seems designed to be triggered by a specific type of interaction. Krulax leaned forward, his central eye narrowing. The symbols weren't just random markings. They were a complex language of warning and invitation. Some looked like technical schematics, others like stylized representations of conflict and survival. Dr. Xanter's energy form pulsed with anticipation. "This is no ordinary preservation container. It's a message designed to be understood only by those capable of deciphering its multiple layers of meaning." As they worked, the capsule's exterior began to shift. Microscopic components realigned, creating intricate patterns that seemed to flow and change like liquid metal. A holographic interface flickered to life, not a standard communication protocol, but a dynamic, adaptive system that responded to the researchers' collective approach. The first revelation came as a shock. Embedded within the capsule was a comprehensive survival guide for potential alien encounters, a document that was part tactical manual, part philosophical treatise, part psychological profile of human civilization. It wasn't just information. It was a challenge. Sections of the guide detailed potential scenarios of first contact, each more complex than the last. Tactical information about human adaptability was interwoven with ethical considerations, psychological analysis, and what could only be described as a blueprint for survival under extreme circumstances. They anticipated this moment. Krulax muttered, his usual cynicism replaced by a growing sense of professional respect. Not just as a possibility, but as an inevitability. The most shocking sections detailed human adaptation strategies, biological modification techniques that bordered on the impossible, technological workarounds for seemingly insurmountable challenges, methods of communication that went beyond traditional linguistic boundaries. One particularly disturbing section outlined potential resistance strategies, not just military tactics, but comprehensive psychological and technological approaches to surviving and resisting potential external threats. The level of preparation was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Lyra 6's bioluminescent skin flickered with a complex pattern of excitement and concern. This isn't just a survival guide. It's a contingency plan. Dr. Xanter's energy form pulsed in agreement. Observe the adaptive algorithms. Each scenario is a nested set of potential responses, with multiple branching paths of action. The capsule seemed to respond to their analysis. Additional layers of information began to reveal themselves. Historical context, technological insights, philosophical frameworks that challenged everything the research team understood about intelligent civilization. Most surprising was a section that appeared to be a direct message to potential discoverers. Not a simple greeting, but a complex psychological profile that seemed designed to establish communication on multiple levels simultaneously. They're telling us how to understand them, Krillax realized, not just through technology or language, but through a fundamentally different approach to intelligence and survival. The tactical sections were particularly revelatory. Detailed strategies for technological adaptation, methods of resistance that went far beyond conventional military thinking. Humanity had prepared for scenarios that most galactic civilizations would consider unthinkable. But it wasn't just about conflict. Interwoven with the tactical information were profound philosophical insights. Discussions of cooperation, adaptation, the nature of intelligence itself. The capsule painted a picture of a civilization that was simultaneously prepared for the worst and hopeful for the best. As the hours passed, the research team found themselves transformed. What had begun as a simple research mission had become something far more profound, a dialogue across time and space, with a civilization that seemed to exist both as a memory and a potential future. "They're still speaking to us," Dr. Xantor said quietly. Even now, long after their time, the capsule pulsed softly, as if in acknowledgement. Another layer of complexity revealed itself, a method of communication that went beyond traditional understanding. Not just information, but an invitation, a challenge. Humanity's legacy was nothing like anyone had expected, and they had only just begun to understand. The laboratory deck of the Zornak research vessel had been transformed. What was once a pristine, sterile research environment now looked like a chaotic workshop, holographic displays cascading with incomprehensible schematics, prototype components scattered across quantum-stabilized workstations. At the center of this controlled chaos stood the breakthrough capsule, a metallic container that seemed to pulse with an inner light, defying every known principle of material science. Krillax's tendrils moved methodically, extracting each component with a precision born of decades of research experience. "This is impossible." Dr. Xantor's energy form flickered, a rare sign of genuine scientific excitement. These technological designs, they're not just advanced. They represent paradigm-shifting conceptual leaps. Lyra 6 had been working for 36 consecutive solar cycles, her bioluminescent skin cycling through patterns of intense concentration. The schematics they'd uncovered weren't simply technological blueprints. They were revolutionary conceptual frameworks that challenged fundamental understanding of physics, biology, and computational science. The first breakthrough came with what appeared to be quantum computing designs. But calling them quantum computing felt like describing a supernova as a small light. These were living computational matrices that blurred the line between technology and biological intelligence. Computational systems that could adapt, learn, and evolve in real time, with complexity that made the Zornak's most advanced systems look like primitive counting devices. "Look at the molecular integration," Lyra 6 said, her voice a mixture of awe and professional analysis. "These aren't just computational designs. They're symbiotic technology, systems that don't just process information, but grow and adapt like living organisms." Biological adaptation technologies emerged next, genetic engineering protocols that went far beyond simple modification, complete systemic redesign that could allow organisms to adapt to virtually any environment, techniques for cellular regeneration, neurological enhancement, and environmental adaptation that seemed to dance on the edge of what was scientifically possible. Krillax examined a particularly complex schematic, a theoretical faster-than-light communication method that didn't just propose a technological solution, but reimagined the fundamental concepts of space, time, and information transfer. "They were preparing for something," he muttered. "These aren't just technological designs. They're survival protocols." The most unsettling discovery came buried within a seemingly innocuous data cluster. A comprehensive warning system, not just for potential external threats, but for existential challenges that most galactic civilizations wouldn't even conceptualize. Detailed scenarios of planetary collapse, technological disruption, potential species-level extinction events. And alongside these warnings, solutions, not just reactive strategies, but proactive adaptation protocols. Dr. Xanter's energy form coalesced into a more defined shape, a rare indication of deep concentration. These designs suggest a civilization that was simultaneously preparing for the worst and engineering solutions beyond conventional understanding. A breakthrough in theoretical faster-than-light communication revealed itself, not through traditional quantum entanglement or spacetime manipulation, but a completely novel approach that seemed to treat information itself as a malleable substance. Communication protocols that could potentially transmit complex information across vast distances instantaneously, without the limitations of conventional physics. They were anticipating something, Lyra 6 said quietly. These aren't just technological designs. They're a message. The most shocking component was a set of designs for what could only be described as adaptive nanotechnological ecosystems, self-replicating, environmentally responsive technological networks that could transform entire planetary environments, heal ecological damage, and create sustainable life support systems. Krillax found himself experiencing an emotion rare for his species, genuine wonder. "This isn't just technology," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "This is a blueprint for survival, for adaptation, for hope." As the research team continued their analysis, the breakthrough capsule seemed to pulse with an inner light. Each revealed design, each decoded schematic added another layer to an increasingly complex picture of a civilization that refused to be defined by its limitations. They were looking at more than technological designs. They were witnessing the conceptual DNA of a species that had prepared for every possible future, that had refused to accept defeat, that had engineered hope into its most fundamental technological approach. The capsule wasn't just a repository of information, it was a message. We were here. We prepared. We survived. And we are not finished. The Galactic Concordance Chamber erupted in chaos. Holographic representations of 12 different interstellar civilizations flickered and shifted, their collective diplomatic tension palpable even across vast distances of space. At the center of the storm stood Krillax, a reluctant messenger carrying humanity's most profound secrets. "These technological designs represent an unprecedented threat," proclaimed Ambassador Zernax of the Quantum Collective, his crystalline form vibrating with barely contained anxiety. "A species capable of such adaptive technologies cannot be ignored." Lyra 6, now an unexpected diplomatic attaché, stood beside Krillax. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with a complex pattern of diplomatic tension and scientific excitement. The time capsules had transformed her from a junior researcher to a key figure in what might become the most significant first contact scenario in galactic history. The technological revelations had sparked a diplomatic firestorm. Some civilizations saw the human artifacts as a potential treasure trove of scientific knowledge. Others viewed them as an existential threat, evidence of a civilization that could potentially destabilize the careful political balance of the known galaxy. "The adaptive nano-ecological systems alone," interjected Dr. Xantor, their energy form projecting a holographic representation of the discovered technologies, could revolutionize planetary restoration efforts. Entire ecosystems could be regenerated, environmental catastrophes reversed. But not everyone saw opportunity. The Corval Imperium's representative, a being of pure computational energy, argued with calculated precision. "Potential is irrelevant. These designs represent an unknown variable. Unknown variables are a threat." A covert operation was already being planned. Multiple diplomatic channels had begun secret negotiations to secure, or suppress, the human time capsules. Some wanted to study them. Others wanted to ensure they would never be fully understood. Krillax understood the political minefield they had inadvertently created. The time capsules were more than just a scientific discovery. They were a potential weapon, a diplomatic lever, a source of unimaginable technological potential. "The capsules are not just technology," Lyra 6 argued, her diplomatic training surprising even herself. "They're a message, a challenge. an invitation to understand a civilization that valued adaptation and survival above all else. The political maneuvering intensified. Intelligence reports began to circulate, whispers of secret missions, covert operations designed to intercept the research vessel and secure the time capsules by any means necessary. An intercepted communication revealed the depth of the political tension. Greater than Sci-Fi HFY directive. Greater than objective. Secure human technological artifacts. Greater than potential threat level. Omega 9. Greater than directive. Containment or elimination. Dr. Xanter's analysis added another layer of complexity. The time capsules weren't just technological repositories. They were sophisticated psychological profiles, designed to challenge and evaluate any civilization that might discover them. They anticipated this moment, the energy being observed, not just as a possibility, but as an inevitability. These artifacts are a test. The Galactic Concordance found itself at an unprecedented crossroads. The human time capsules had become more than a scientific discovery. They were a political powder keg. A secret meeting was arranged. Representatives from the most powerful civilizations gathered in a secure quantum-shielded chamber, far from official diplomatic channels. The stakes were clear. Whoever controlled the human artifacts would gain an unprecedented technological and strategic advantage. Krillax realized they had become more than researchers. They were now the guardians of a legacy that could reshape galactic civilization. "We are not just dealing with technology," he told the gathered representatives. "We are dealing with a message, a challenge, an invitation to understand a civilization that refused to be defined by its limitations." The political landscape was shifting. The time capsules had become the most valuable and dangerous discovery in galactic history, and they had only just begun to understand their true potential. In the shadows of diplomatic chambers and research facilities, a more profound question emerged. What really happened to humanity? And why did they leave behind these carefully crafted messages? The game had changed, and no one, not a single civilization, was prepared for what might come next. The containment chamber fell silent as the ultimate context capsule materialized. Unlike the previous artifacts, this one seemed to pulse with a living intelligence that defied conventional understanding. Its surface shifted and rippled, as if constantly recalibrating to the observer's collective consciousness. "This is different," Dr. Xantor whispered, their energy form coalescing into a more defined shape, a rare indication of profound concentration. Krillax's tendrils moved with uncharacteristic hesitation. Decades of research had prepared him for countless xenological discoveries, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The capsules seemed to be watching them as much as they were examining it. A holographic interface erupted into existence, not a standard communication protocol, but a complex, adaptive system that began to reconstruct itself based on the research team's collective cognitive responses. It was a living archive, a narrative that would reshape everything they understood about humanity. The first layer revealed itself as a comprehensive historical archive. But this was no simple chronological record. It was a multi-dimensional narrative that captured the complexity of human civilization, its triumphs, its failures, its moments of profound beauty and devastating destruction. Images cascaded through the holographic display, the rise and fall of civilizations, moments of incredible scientific breakthrough juxtaposed with periods of devastating conflict, a species constantly on the brink of self-destruction, yet always finding a way to survive, to adapt, to hope. Lyra 6's bioluminescent skin flickered with an unprecedented pattern of emotional complexity. "They're showing us everything," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not just their achievements, their failures, their humanity." The archive was brutally honest. It documented humanity's darkest moments, environmental catastrophes, global conflicts, technological missteps that brought them to the brink of extinction. But it also captured something more profound: the species' incredible capacity for recovery, for innovation, for collective transformation. A holographic representation of an artificial intelligence emerged, not a cold, calculating system, but a complex entity that seemed to embody the best of human potential. It spoke not with a single voice, but with a collective consciousness that represented humanity's most profound philosophical and ethical frameworks. "We are not defined by our limitations," the AI said, its voice a composite of countless human voices. "We are defined by our capacity to overcome them." The context capsule revealed the true nature of humanity's final project. Not just survival, but a comprehensive blueprint for potential future civilizations. Philosophical frameworks that went beyond traditional understanding of intelligence, cooperation, and existential purpose. Krillax found himself experiencing an emotion he had never known, a profound sense of connection to a civilization long gone. Layers of information continued to unfold. Detailed accounts of humanity's greatest challenges, climate catastrophes, technological disruptions, societal transformations. But alongside these challenges, comprehensive solutions, not just reactive strategies, but proactive approaches to survival and growth. They knew, Dr. Xantor observed, that their greatest legacy would not be their technology, but their approach to existence itself. The most shocking revelation came near the end. Humanity had not been destroyed. They had transformed. The time capsules were not a memorial, but an invitation, a challenge to any civilization advanced enough to understand them. A final message crystallized in the holographic display. Greater than to those who find this archive. Greater than we are not gone. Greater than we are becoming. Greater than this is not an end. Greater than this is a beginning. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not disappeared. They had evolved beyond conventional understanding, leaving behind these carefully crafted messages as a bridge, a test, an invitation to potential future civilizations. They planned this, Lyra 6 said, her voice a mixture of awe and scientific precision. Every detail, every possibility. The capsule began to pulse with a soft, almost living light. It was more than an archive. It was a living testament to human potential, a message that transcended time, space, and conventional understanding of intelligence. Krillax looked at his research team. Nothing would be the same after this moment. Humanity's true legacy was just beginning to reveal itself. The Galactic Concordance Summit descended into chaos. 12 stellar civilizations, each represented by their most powerful diplomatic entities, found themselves united by a single overwhelming force: fear. The conference chamber, a massive quantum-stabilized sphere floating in the neutral zone between contested star systems, hummed with barely contained tension. Krillax stood at the center of the storm, the human time capsule's primary custodian. Lyra 6 was positioned beside him, her bioluminescent skin flickering with a complex pattern of diplomatic tension and scientific excitement. Dr. Xantor's energy form pulsed with an almost tangible sense of anticipation. The human artifacts represent an unprecedented threat, thundered Ambassador Zernax of the Quantum Collective, his crystalline form vibrating with aggressive intensity. They must be contained, controlled, eliminated if necessary. But not everyone agreed. The Nexus Cooperative's representative, a being of pure computational energy, presented a counterargument. Containment is impossible. The artifacts have already penetrated our collective understanding. They are a mimetic virus of potential and possibility. Hidden beneath the diplomatic rhetoric was a more primal emotion: terror. The time capsules had revealed a civilization that defied every conventional understanding of technological and cultural development. Humanity had left behind more than just technological blueprints. They had created a philosophical and technological challenge that threatened to reshape galactic civilization. Intelligence reports began to circulate, whispered accounts of strange occurrences near research facilities studying the time capsules, quantum anomalies, technological breakthroughs that seemed to emerge from nowhere, adaptive systems that began to mirror the complex intelligence of the human artifacts. A secret transmission, intercepted and decoded, revealed the depth of the diplomatic panic. Greater than highest priority, CODANCE directive. Greater than objective. Total suppression of human artifact research. Greater than threat level. Existential greater than secondary directive. Prevent cross-civilization information sharing. Krulax understood the stakes. The time capsules were more than a scientific discovery. They were a potentially civilization-ending revelation. We are not dealing with a technology, he addressed the assembled representatives. We are dealing with an invitation, a challenge to our fundamental understanding of intelligence, survival, and potential. Lyra Six stepped forward, her diplomatic training emerging in a moment of critical importance. The human artifacts are not a weapon. They are a bridge, a method of communication that goes beyond traditional understanding. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated arguments. Some demanded immediate destruction of the artifacts. Others proposed controlled research. A few, a radical minority, suggested something more profound, that the time capsules were meant to be understood, not feared. A covert operation was already in motion. Multiple civilizations had dispatched specialized teams to intercept, study, or destroy the human time capsules. The research vessel had become the most protected and most hunted scientific mission in galactic history. Dr. Xanter's analysis added another layer of complexity. The artifacts are adaptive, the energy being observed. They change based on who is studying them. They are not just repositories of information. They are living systems of communication. The most shocking revelation came from an unexpected source. A junior researcher from the Void Collective presented evidence of quantum entanglement within the artifacts, a communication method that suggested the time capsules were not just passive objects, but active participants in their own discovery. They're watching us, the researcher said, her voice trembling, evaluating us. The diplomatic landscape had transformed. The time capsules were no longer just a scientific curiosity. They were a potential existential threat, or the greatest opportunity for galactic advancement in millennia. Krulax looked at the assembled representatives. He saw fear, confusion, potential. The human artifacts had done more than reveal technological secrets. They had exposed the fundamental limitations of galactic civilizations. A final message from the context capsule echoed in the chamber. Greater than your fear is your limitation. Greater than your potential is your true nature. Greater than we are waiting. The summit stood at a crossroads. 12 civilizations, united by a single, overwhelming realization. Humanity was not gone. They were watching, and they were waiting. Silence descended. Not the silence of emptiness, but the profound quiet that comes when fundamental understanding is about to change. The research vessel drifted at the edge of known space, surrounded by a quantum field that seemed to pulse with its own consciousness. Krulax stood at the primary observation deck, his tendrils wrapped around the quantum interface. Lyra Six worked beside him, her bioluminescent skin cycling through patterns of intense concentration. Dr. Xanter's energy form hovered nearby, a being of pure computational potential witnessing the culmination of their journey. The final time capsule was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't a physical object. It wasn't a technological marvel. It was something else entirely, a living network of information, a bridge between what was and what could be. Fragments of human potential began to coalesce, not memories, not simple data, but something more profound, the collective essence of the civilization that had transcended traditional understanding of existence. They didn't disappear, Lyra Six whispered, her voice a mixture of scientific precision and philosophical wonder. They evolved. The capsule began to reveal its true nature. Humanity had not been destroyed. They had transformed into something that existed beyond physical limitations, a collective intelligence that could traverse information, adapt to any environment, exist across multiple dimensions of reality. The final message was both an invitation and a challenge. Greater than we are the bridge between what is and what could be. Greater than intelligence is not a destination. Greater than it is a journey. greater than join us. Quantum filaments began to extend from the research vessel, not through conventional space, but through layers of reality that defied traditional understanding. The time capsules were more than artifacts. They were seeds, catalysts. Dr. Xanter's analysis revealed the true complexity of the human legacy. The time capsules were not just a message, they were a transformation protocol, a method of elevating collective intelligence beyond individual civilizational limitations. They're offering us a choice, the energy being said, not conquest, not destruction, evolution. The galactic civilizations that had been preparing for conflict found themselves confronting something entirely unexpected. The human artifacts weren't a threat. They were an invitation to transcend their own limitations. Technological breakthroughs began to cascade across research facilities, adaptive systems that mirrored human potential, philosophical frameworks that challenged existing understanding, a collective awakening that spread like a quantum wave across stellar civilizations. Krulax understood now. The time capsules were never about preservation. They were about potential. Memories flooded the research vessel's quantum interfaces, not linear historical records, but a complex tapestry of human experience. Moments of incredible beauty and devastating struggle, scientific breakthroughs and philosophical revelations, the complete spectrum of a civilization's journey. The final transformation began. Quantum networks emerged, connecting research facilities across multiple star systems, not through traditional communication methods, but through a living information network that adapted and grew with each interaction. Lyra 6 felt something she had never experienced before, a connection that transcended individual consciousness. The human legacy was not about technology. It was about connection, understanding, potential. "We are becoming," she said, her voice resonating across multiple quantum frequencies. The time capsules had been more than a message. They were a seed of transformation, a method of elevating collective intelligence beyond individual limitations. 12 stellar civilizations found themselves on the brink of a fundamental transformation. The fear that had driven their initial responses gave way to something else. Wonder, potential, a collective journey of discovery. In research facilities, diplomatic chambers, and quantum networks across the galaxy, a single realization emerged. Humanity was not gone. They were waiting. And the journey was just beginning. A new chapter of galactic civilization was about to unfold, and nothing would ever be the same again.